Hello and welcome to the Citizen Service Show. I am with Sonya Harris Hall, your host. Crime seems to be on everyone's minds these days, and joining me for an in-depth discussion of the Memphis Police Department is our very own Director Toney Armstrong, who heads up the Memphis Police Department. Thank you, Director Armstrong, for joining me on the show today.
Well, thank you for having me.
I mentioned that crime seems to be on everyone's mind. Maybe talk to us a little bit about the strategies that are being pursued to address crime in the city of Memphis.
Well, actually, crime should be on everyone's mind. You should be conscious of what's going on in your city, and everyone wants to feel safe. And it's one of the things that I found out throughout my law enforcement career, regardless of race, creed, color, economic background. We all want the same thing. We want safe environments for our families. We are still feel like that we have a hold on crime. Things are not out of control. Sometimes you listen to the things that are going on in the media. But people have to understand that that's the role of media. It's about ratings. It's about getting viewers to watch. So sometimes you don't necessarily hear about the best of the best. You hear about the worst of the worst, because those are the things that that increase their ratings.
That's right. That's right. Well, what were your immediate concerns, or what are your immediate concerns? You mentioned that it should be on our minds because we are residents of the city, and so we need to be conscientious. But what are your immediate concerns as the director of the police department regarding crime? You know,
my immediate concerns are not necessarily crime. Well, of course, the crime numbers is something that we always watch, and we always we're graded statistically. You know, everything that we do is statistically driven. But the perception of crime was my, immediate concern. A couple of phone calls I got almost immediately after I took office really was an eye-opener to me. Young lady called me about her son, and she basically said, I have a son that's pretty much, for all intents and purposes, he's a boy, but he does everything that I ask him to do. He makes good grades in school, never in trouble. He's a good kid. Typical boy, but he's a good kid. In my neighborhood, he's been heavily recruited to be a gang member, and it's something that he knows that I won't tolerate. So he resists, and in his resisting, the gang retaliates against him with violence. So she had a concern as to what am I supposed to do? Am I supposed to keep this healthy teenage boy in the house all summer? So another phone call I got was from an elderly lady that basically said, Director Armstrong, I live in a neighborhood that I've lived in basically all my life. My home is paid for, my kids are grown. I can't afford to move. And it appears that the gang members, drug dealers, pretty much taking over my neighborhood, pretty much taking over my street. And she basically said, if I can't call the police department for help, who am I supposed to call?
Wow.
And it was kind of powerful to me. I said, she's right. So to those two particular families, me sitting on the phone talking about statistics and telling them, you know what, ma'am, in the last 5 years we got a 26% reduction in crime, means absolutely nothing to them. So that is a concern to me, the perception of crime. And I think in some of our neighborhoods, statistics don't necessarily mean anything to them.
Well, how those two examples that you've given me sounds as though there's a unique need to reach out in the community. Under your leadership, there's been a new initiative, this community outreach program. Tell us a little bit about that, and what is your vision? How do you see that program addressing those concerns that you heard from those two different citizens?
I was hoping you asked me that.
Okay.
But actually, right after I took office, you all heard me and immediately say something about community policing. And what my vision in community policing, as you know, for over the last 5 years, you've heard a lot about Blue Crush. Our Blue Crush initiative, which is a data-driven initiative. It basically is data telling us where crimes are occurring, what time they're occurring, everything statistically that we can gain. It tells us and allows us to deploy our troops in those particular areas. Well, one of the problems that we've had, one of the problems that I see is that we go to these areas, we heavily saturate them, and we put all of our efforts in these areas, and we do see reductions in crime. But inevitably we leave, and only to return. We'll go back, we'll do the same thing, and we'll leave, and inevitably we return. So I said that it seems to me that we're always in a reactive mode. We're always waiting on things to happen, and then we react to that, and we're going to address that, and we kind of leave. So, we did not have a crime prevention unit in place when I took office. Anything as far as proactive policing in place when I took office. So we had a crime prevention unit at one time, but it was shut down. As you know, we also had coax throughout the city, which was supposed to be community-based police officers. They wasn't been properly utilized. Some of them were not properly staffed. Some of them facilities were not functional. So what I did was I shut down the coax, and I know you probably heard about that in the news. Armstrong shuts down the coax. But what I did was shut down the coax, and one of the problems that we had with coax is there was a bidded position, which means that the only qualification that you had to get to this particular position is have more time and outbid the person, outbid one particular person. So that caused a concern to me because I didn't feel that we were necessarily getting officers that were passionate about doing community police, community-oriented work. There were other units throughout the department that allowed us the flexibility to have officers and to transfer officers in and out as we saw fit, organized crime, the training academy, internal affairs. I needed that same concept with community policing to be able to allow us to identify officers that we feel that would be beneficial to us in community policing, and more importantly, to identify officers that we felt would not be beneficial to us. So we did that. We shut down the coax, but in essence, we shifted all of those officers over to our community outreach program. And what this is that I'm a military person, so I look at everything from a military perspective. We're going to go into, we're going to still allow the data. Dr. Janikowski, University of Memphis is still working with us on that. We're still going to allow the data with the mayor's youth violence initiative. We're going to focus on areas that have been heavily impacted by youth violence. And when they say youth violence, we mean those ages between 14 and up, maybe 24, 25 years old. We're going to target those. We're probably going to pick initially 2 or 3 areas. Go into these areas with a military approach. We'll go in and we'll restore order.
Wow.
If you just to the 2 examples that I've given you, in those 2 particular neighborhoods, there probably have not been aggressive policing in those particular neighborhoods. So we got to go back to being just getting aggressive. We're going to go back, restore order. When we restore order, we'll get a citizen buy-in. We'll pull in all the programs that we need, from all the division directors throughout the city. We'll go back, educate, get our faith-based communities, address gang problems, whatever the problems that we feel like that's blight, whatever the problems that we feel like are driving forces to crime, we'll address that. Once we do that, we'll educate. At some point, we'll do what we call turn it back over to the citizens.
Wow.
Downscale our operation and we'll move it to another section of the city. That's a quick overview of it, but it's basically what our military does. When our military goes to foreign land, on foreign soil, that's what they do. They go restore order. After they restore order, they educate, help those people formulate some type of government. Once that is established, they scale down the operation.